Let's take a look at this information and let's determine the margin of safety. So they've given us sales and the selling price per unit. They've given us cost of goods sold so we can calculate gross profit. And they've given us selling expense and administrative expenses so we can calculate operating income. Now, they also gave us some other information. I'm going to assume this is given to you. They gave us the percentages of the cost split between fixed and variable. And they've already done analysis to determine what that split is for cost of goods sold, which has a different split between fixed and variable than the split for selling expenses and the split for administrative expenses. So once we know those splits, we can just calculate what the total dollars are, fixed and variable. So you see all I'm doing is taking the total cost times the fixed percentage to get the fixed amount here. And then I'm taking the total cost times the variable percentage. And I'm doing the same thing for the selling expenses and administrative expenses. Okay? So you can see the math involved here. Now, to calculate margin of safety, we have to know break even first. So we've got to do some interim calculations. First, let's calculate our total fixed and variable cost. We need to know that because break even requires that. Let me slide on down again. All right, now can we calculate the units sold? Well, sure we can. Take the 98,640, and by the way, these are in thousands, so that's really 98,640,000. And then we're dividing it by 246.60. That's the selling price per unit. So we know the units sold were 400,000. Again, these are in thousands. Okay, so from there we can calculate the contribution margin, which is just sales amount 98,640 minus variable cost, right? The contribution margin income statement, you take sales minus total variable cost. Now, let's say we wanted to know contribution margin percentage. Well, then you just take the contribution margin and divide it by the sales, both in dollars. You could do this on a per unit basis as well. You'd still get the same contribution margin percentage. Okay, so from there, we can calculate break even. And the formula for break even is fixed cost divided by contribution margin per unit. Oh, and I see that I actually typed this in. I think that should go there to make this a little bit more consistent. So take what you calculated in cell E9, which was total cost, and divide it by the contribution margin per unit, 60,000 divided by 400, and you get break-even sales would be 112,400 units. Okay? So from there, if you wanted to calculate break-even in dollars, you would just simply, well, this would be an alternative. You could take the total fixed cost again, 16,860, and divide it by the contribution margin percentage, which we previously calculated. Okay, so now we know break-even sales in dollars was 27,718,000. From there, we can calculate margin of safety. Margin of safety is simply sales minus break-even, and use it in the same unit of measure. So we're going to do this in total dollars. So we take 98,640 of sales, and we divide it by the break-even sales, or I'm sorry, we take the sales, 98,640, and we subtract break-even sales, and then we divide it by the sales. Okay, so you can see where I'm doing the math here. Take the cell B3 minus B14, get that answer, and then divide it by B3. And we get a margin of safety of 71.9. And that's how we tackle this one. Now, let's assume management is considering a plant expansion program. Okay, and they want to increase, it will increase sales by 8,631,000, or 35,000 units at 246.60 in yearly sales. And to get this kind of increase in capacity, they have to incur an increase in fixed cost by 3,600,000. All right, so all that part about increasing sales is irrelevant because we're not going to change the variable and fixed percentages. They're basically saying operating cost, the fixed cost will increase by 3,600,000. So all we have to do is add 3,600,000 here. Right, this is all in thousands, so I'll just enter plus 3,600. You can see the formula right up here. And when I do that, you'll see that all our calculations change, and our new margin of safety is 65.9%. Okay, so that's how we could change this to reflect an increase in fixed cost and then calculate what the new margin of safety would be. And obviously, since fixed costs went up, the margin of safety went down in this expansion scenario.